Thank you so much for the honor of speaking here today. Today I'm going to talk about some overview visualizations in the arts. I will be using some oldies but goodies, so I beg your pardon if any of them are already familiar. But I'll begin just by talking about some important overviews. Here's one, not from the arts necessarily, but it's something that I think we all need to understand. It's Moore's Law, of course, one of the most important time series in our lives so far. And two more of the most important time series of our lives to come, world population and global temperature. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of poetry to these diagrams, and perhaps that's what they need to obtain the force they deserve. So today I'm going to talk about poetic approaches to the overview concept. I won't even hope to be comprehensive. I'm omitting maps, I'm omitting diagrams, I'm omitting charts and graphs and networks. So really, what's left? Well, plenty actually. On the event of Neil Armstrong's passing last week, in discussing the overview effect, the blogger Claire Evans noted that going to the moon has a tendency to turn test pilots into poets. Neil Armstrong articulated it with his usual clipped decorum. It suddenly struck me that that tiny pea, pretty and blue, was the Earth. I put up my thumb and shut one eye, and my thumb blotted out the planet. I didn't feel like a giant. I felt very, very small. It's not without reason that the things we remember most about the Apollo missions are its words and gestures, the famous first step and the steps which followed. So the question is then, as we think about yet other overviews, what are those words and gestures that can change how we think? Here at the top is a rather astonishing picture with a detail below. It's a picture of the entire universe. It's a logarithmic map of the universe all the way back to the Big Bang. And here is Tom Friedman's cheeky everything, a sheet of paper on which he has painstakingly written every word in the dictionary. It too is a picture of everything we can imagine in words and gestures. The arts and sciences may have different truths to reveal, and both are good. So today I'm going to talk about, in this possible scheme of useful, interesting, and beautiful, if useful is considered the apex of visualization, then perhaps I'm interested in the bottom, the nadir, the expressive perhaps, and not the functional. Many of the visualizations in which I'm interested in function as a kind of a self-exam, whether for the individual or for society, a way that society can look back and understand something about itself and see itself from an angle from which it has not necessarily understood itself before, and say, I look like that. So I'll begin with a little self-portraiture. Assuredly, the starting point for all of my first-year art students. Yesterday, those math geniuses at Wolfram announced that they were now applying their huge minds to the problem of visualizing your Facebook accounts. It's personal analytics for Facebook from Wolfram, and it's about time. This ushers in an amazing new era of quantified self-visualization porn. So go get it, and we'll scarcely remember a time that it didn't exist. What else was there? Well, here's a riposte. This is another quantified self-portrait, Taper by Tim Hawkinson. He has sliced a photograph of his body into thin strips and then sorted them by width, from the narrowest tip of his pinky all the way down to the widest part of his butt. And another perhaps even more remarkable and more conceptually extreme self-portrait by Tim Hawkinson, completely reciprocal, called Blind Spot, which shows all of the parts of his body that he himself cannot see. He asks, who needs a self-portrait from a mirror? I can already see myself. I know what I look like, except here. Close-up of that. So the top of his head, the back of his butt. So today I'm just going to talk about 2 or 3 strategies that artists are using and have used to understand the overview. And the first, what kinds of options are there? Well, there are many. Artists are inheriting all of the language, the rich visual language that Manuel and the others have spoken about today. Here's a menu of options from A. Abela. Another menu of options, Catalog of Visualization Idioms by Ben Fry from his thesis. And even a fairly common operation like showing a map of the world has just a huge number of options for which projection to use. And it's actually a very political decision. It's not neutral at all. Every choice can be highly manipulative. So one of these strategies I'm going to talk about today are artists' collections, just grabbing stuff, small multiples and holisms. So these begin in many cases with photography, which from its beginning in the 1830s, has been preoccupied with cataloging phenomena. Richard Roth has written that the series, the photo series, is the backbone of photosensibility. It implies a belief in scientific method. One example is not sufficiently evidential, but because one may be a coincidence, but many, repeatedly, are compelling. They are proof. And so we see this in the well-known architectural studies of Bernd and Hilla Becher. These photo series are organized into what Edward Tufte has called small multiples, this uniform grid, a presentation grid, which allows for both comparison between the units and an understanding of the category as a whole. They do this again and again. But the same strategy is applied to understand people as well. Here, lipsticks, a photo collection by Stacy Green, a tremendously interesting visualization of lipsticks owned by various individual women. Everyday objects, in this case, reveal and refract rich, although highly qualitative, information about their owners. Another interesting contrast related to this is Portia Munson's Pink Project. The artist collected commercial products for women. The mere act of collecting them reveals the extent to which their design infantilizes their owners. And here, completely subjective experience can acquire intersubjective validity through visualization schemes like small multiples. These are drawings made by Megan Campbell, documenting her attempts to draw a straight line in her notebook while riding various subway lines in New York City. Another collection of drawings, Kim Dingle asked Las Vegas teenagers to draw the United States from memory. She then compiled these into a single painting, which reveals as much about the Urgestalt of the United States' shape as it does about its citizens' appalling lack of geographic knowledge. This marvelous collection, probably well known to you, Aaron Koblen's Sheep Market, in which he collected 10,000 drawings of sheep from people on the internet. It's perhaps the first artistic use of mechanical Turk, a primary tool for data scientists, such as Johan, as an artistic medium. Here, those data laborers are put to the task set by Saint-Exupéry's Little Prince to draw a sheep facing to the left. Creating a collection can sometimes be accomplished through a process of removal or filtering, rather than just accumulation. And this example is from Rutherford Chang, who has taken the front page of the New York Times and blacked out everything but the faces. Presenting this as a 30-day calendar, it's a result which tells exclusively of the people who made the news over the course of a month. This is a map by Kathy Prendergast, who has made a rather ambivalent map of the United States, shown in Catherine Harmon's book on Maps and the Imagination. It only retains the real places whose names begin with the word lost, like Lost Mountain, Lost Canyon, Lost Island. These are real places. And if they're on a map, are they really lost? But it's this kind of poetic sense of filtering everything but the data she wants. Sometimes new ways of understanding a collection can be achieved simply through rearrangement of a well-known and pre-existing set. This could mean sorting or grouping it in an unexpected way. This example, for example, is Tim Hawkinson's alphabetized alphabet. We all know the alphabet we have since we were small. Here he rearranges the letters in an absolute phonetic order. W comes after D. And it takes something so familiar and instantly transforms it into something unrecognizable. This is one of my most favorite visualizations because it was made completely without technology. It's the Sky Mall Liberation Project by Evan Roth. Male and female faces are extracted from an in-flight shopping magazine. Being on an airplane, he didn't even have a pair of scissors to make this. Here, non-white and white people in Sky Mall. Another interesting project involving the rearrangement of collections is the work of Fred Wilson, an American artist whose practice involves going to museums and basically just reorganizing the collections they already have. Here, revealing their ideological agendas. Here he collides a collection of metal objects from Baltimore from the 1780s, silver vessels and slave shackles. Just a collection together of objects, metal objects from the same time and same place. And here a collection from new media artists Jennifer and Kevin McCoy, Every Anvil, in which they've systematically extracted every shot from the Looney Tunes cartoon series and organized them onto individual discs. One disc is dedicated to speed clouds. Another is every jetpack, every hanging by a thread. And so here, using the notion of a database, they've created new collections from the rearrangement of existing material. So, collections. And now, image averaging, which maybe we've seen a lot of in the new media, a second approach to obtaining overviews, possibly pioneered by Nancy Berson in the late 70s and early 1980s while she was an artist in residence at MIT. She also invented the technique of morphing. And here are average faces of famous beauties from the 1950s and from the early 80s. This was made in 1982. A more recent project of hers, Guys Who Look Like Jesus. She went to Craigslist and said, do you look like Jesus? Come find me, I'll take your picture. In the lower right is the centroid of examples. So ostensibly illustrating the category itself with this image average. Although it may suffer a lack of details, it can still offer an excellent gestalt. Jim Campbell, well known here at Ars Electronica, every frame of The Wizard of Oz averaged together. David Tinapple, a former student of mine, used a face detector on 10 different television channels to get the average face shown on each channel. Fox, for example, gives you the face of white male authority. A well-known example from Jason Salavon are the averages of Playboy centerfolds by decade. So 120 averages into each of these 4 images. Shows long-term trends in the ideal female form in the media towards thinner and blonder. And another project by Salavon. We think each of our special moments is totally unique. In his project 100 Special Moments, he's averaged together the wedding photographs and children on the lap of Santa Claus from a mall photographer, revealing the cookie-cutter patterns that structure our lives. Another project by Salavon, Houses for Sale from different cities. So another strategy I'll speak about briefly is holisms, which represent it's a representation of an exhaustible or finite data set in its entirety. Also can mean a set of visualizations which, taken as wholes, organically reveal the influence of a complex set of forces. So first, things in their entirety. An example you may know, Every One-to-One by Lisa Jevbrat is a visualization of every address in the IP4 address space, colored according to the kind of service there. So she wrote a program to ping every possible address in IPv4. This is only a fragment of the image, and this is a way of seeing the entire internet, literally. She does have a complete picture. Another one, back to Tim Hawkinson, is all of the dental impression compound my mouth could contain cast in lead. You can almost feel him gagging as it shows the absolute extent or limit of his mouth and its volume. And finally, a more holistic example showing a combination of a complex set of forces. This is the Most Wanted Paintings project by Komar and Melamed. They did a very comprehensive set of surveys of people's tastes. They said, do you prefer to see paintings that are large or small? What's your favorite color? Blue, red, green, so forth. Do you prefer pictures of animals or famous historic figures? And after taking an extensive set of surveys of this, you can see the size of the paintings and colors people prefer, indoors, outdoors, lakes, forests, rivers, winter, spring, summer, and so on. After each of these surveys that they've done with thousands of respondents from a professional interviewing service, they produce the conceit that a single painting can embody these preferences. Here it is, everyone, the favorite painting of the United States, and also the least wanted painting as well. And lest they stop there, they do this for 10 different countries. The Italians, you see, cannot bear the weight of their heritage, and the Dutch uniquely prefer abstraction. So this is a way of distilling this down. Does this contain information? Maybe. Okay, so I'm now going to show just a bit of contestational visualizations and finding oneself in the data as a third and final strategy. I must be killing the translators because I'm only at half the time I thought I'd be at. Sorry. So this third strategy of finding oneself in the data and producing visualizations that can be a territory for interesting disagreements and conversations. I begin with not an artwork, but a famous image of the Earth at night. And there's an opportunity for overview images like this to tell us something new about ourselves as a global society. But I'm also interested in their capacity to provoke new questions, and particularly to serve as a territory for debate. This here is the seemingly neutral answer to a seemingly neutral question. What does the Earth look like at night? Well, it's simple. You build a machine, you send the machine up, it takes pictures at night, you stitch them together, this is the result you get. But as seemingly neutral as that is, it's in fact a very rich territory for discussion. For example, we can see who uses the energy. We see Africa, literally the dark continent. We see a line of lights across Russia, which is the Trans-Siberian Railroad. There's many, we can see the whaling vessels off of Japan, which cause lights in the middle of the ocean at night. That these are, this is basically an opportunity for people to have discussions and prompt interesting kinds of debate. A very great project by Martin Wattenberg does the same kind of thing about debate, but actually allows you to find yourself in the data. And Martin is responsible, I think, for pointing this out to me, of this notion of making interactive visualizations where people's first point of purchase is to find themselves in the data. So this is the baby name wizard, or baby name Voyager, that he created with his wife, who's a baby name expert. And it shows the trend in the United States Census data over more than 100 years of the popularity of different baby names. But it does so for fragments of names as well. So this is just the trend in the letter B. We can see that there was a big peak in the use of the letter B for baby names in the 1930s, a dip in the 60s, and a peak again in the 1990s. For the letter I, we see a huge dip in the 1960s but Irving, this name that was popular for people's grandparents, is on the resurgence. So this is immediately something where people want to find themselves. You take this and put it in front of 6 young people and they'll just chat about this and say, well, what about my name? What about your name? What about my friend's name? And to see how they fit into it. And then begin to analyze trends. And then begin to want to say, well, why is the letter Q suddenly, and Z and X suddenly so popular for baby names now? Which is true. Finally, I'm going to end by showing an example of mine. It was shown here at Ars Electronica 2002, and it's called The Secret Lives of Numbers. It's an interactive visualization, and it's a way of thinking about a data set compiled by an artist, meaning a data set where the job of the artist is not only to visualize some data, but also to ask the question in the first place that produces that data set in order to see it. And so the act of filtering the world in some sense to produce a novel data set is part of the artistic practice. And it comes from an observation I made in the late 90s while playing with Alta Vista and Google. If you go to an image, search engine, and you type in pretty much anything, you'll get this little number in the upper right, which is the number of web pages that contain that term. If you type in Michael Jackson, you'll get many, many hits. If you type in my name, you'll get many fewer. And so this is this measure, let's call it the popularity of the search term. Now, it says that there's results 1 through 10 of 84 million. They don't actually serve up 84 million results. In fact, if you try it, you only get 1,000 and then they cut you off. But the 84 million is your cue that either the thing you've asked for is too broad of a search, or perhaps it's a very popular concept and you need to refine from there. It's kind of amazing that even in 2012, this is pretty much the main feedback we have, that all you have, that your search term is as broad or as narrow as it is. But this number was interesting to me. I was idle and bored one day, and I sat in front of the computer, and I typed in different numbers. So here, for example, is 9110. It has 84 million hits. Here's 912, 69 million hits. And something special happens with 911. 109 million hits. This is already screenshot a long time ago. And the number 911 is obviously important for a lot of reasons. It's September 11th. It's an emergency phone call code in the United States. It's actually the model of a Porsche automobile. It's a lot of things. We can see then that somehow the number 911 figures more significantly in the collective unconscious than other numbers. So what I did was I wrote a program to assess the popularity of every number from 1 to 1,000,000. And I'll show that to you now. So here we are. This is a program. It's, to the best of my knowledge, still running online after some time. And we're looking at a data set from 1997 right now. I've been capturing it every 6 months or so when I remember to do so. And it's an interactive visualization that shows us the trends in this data. One can zoom out and see the data set. So here we notice some patterns. We begin to see, oh look, there's regular spikes every 100, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400. There are similar spikes every 1,000. And similar spikes even lower down every 10 and every 50 and every 25. So these reveal the human tendency to round, our preference for round numbers. I say I've got about 1,000 stamps in my stamp collection. I don't say I've got 943 or something like that. But there's many other trends as well besides this. For example, we can see this general slope here, or this big peak, leading up to the years. And starting at around 1600, we begin to see this peak, which is the year of the Common Era, how we mark time. What's interesting, perhaps, is the slope of this curve. We see that 1980 is literally twice as important in our collective unconscious as 1970 and as 1960. The slope of this curve is our rate of forgetting. It literally documents the extent to which we cease to care about the past. Of course, in here are also all of the special years that mean something to us as a culture. So in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and in fact, this shows up as a spike. So to visualize the unique individual numbers that mean something special, there's another display here on the right-hand side that shows the numbers organized in rows of 100, 0 to 99, 100 to 299, and so forth, this bright area being the years. And you may notice this interesting diagonal line right here. These vertical stripes are the tens, but this interesting diagonal line, these are 4-digit numbers that rhyme. So these are numbers like, I don't know, 2727, or 5555, or 6363. And these numbers, one can conjecture, are more popular simply because they're easier to remember. If you're a pizza place or a taxi company, you want to have them in your phone number, or something like that. If we look in here, we see the tax forms, we see the area codes, we see the zip codes, the postal codes that make a difference in our lives. So I'm going to just conclude by showing maybe one example. We have numbers that are the numbers that are important in our computing culture, 8286, 8386, 8486, and in television culture like 90210. But one little example here perhaps kind of captures it all. This is the number 12345. Again, a 5-digit number, more popular simply because it's easier to remember. So this becomes then a data set which the artist extracts and which presents to the public as a mirror that we hold up as a kind of unique and idiosyncratic, perhaps useless, but interesting nonetheless, I hope, self-examination of our collective unconscious, compiled across trillions of pieces of data from a variety of data sets. Here's 2003, very similar. We can see that there's something going on here. There's signal where we did not know that there was one before, and this becomes a territory that we can begin to analyze. And so I submit that as a mode of artistic practice of data visualization. So with that, well, the number with the biggest hits would be something like the low numbers, like 1. You know, we use the numbers under 10 day to day. So it's really quite, the low numbers are quite common. But you can see for yourself online. You see already we have questions. So anyway, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.